The Raiders make some roster moves on Monday. We'll tell you what they were and what they mean for the state of the team as they continue to move forward. That plus a whole lot more on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for October 22nd, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day. That's because of your support, Raider Nation, and also because of my man Ari, who does a great job behind the scenes making it do what it do, making sure we're up on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're sounding good each and every day. We shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line is always wide open like some old school TV antennas. 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3. And please believe, plenty of feedback to get to, so we'll do as much as possible there in segment number 3. Segment number 2, I have a text from Jason in Colorado that I've really been holding on to since last week. It's a really lengthy text. It's a really good text, kind of on the state of the team, even before Aiden O'Connell got injured in Sunday's game. So we'll go over that, talk about that. Has a lot of the points that I brought up on Monday's show, and I just think it's a really good text. So we'll address that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, including some roster moves that the Raiders made. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So off top, the big question on Monday was going into the press conference with Antonio Pierce, wondering what the status of Aiden O'Connell was. Now, Antonio Pierce never gave us a clear update. He said he did not know yet, but there was multiple reports that were out before we met with Antonio Pierce, and there was multiple reports that came out afterwards. So we'll kind of go in chronological order. Adam Schefter, early in the morning on Monday, Raiders quarterback Aiden O'Connell now is expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks with a broken thumb. He's getting a second opinion today to confirm the initial diagnosis. Then Rap Sheet, Ian Rappaport from NFL Network said Raiders quarterback Aiden O'Connell is heading to IR with a fractured thumb. O'Connell had resumed starting before this injury. He's out 4 to 6 weeks, has a chance to return this season. Again, those were the 2 reports that came out before we met with Antonio Pierce. We asked him about it. He said he didn't have any kind of an update on what was going on with him, and we'll find out sooner rather than later. So that has not been confirmed yet by the team. And I just want to make sure to put that out there because even though Shefty and Ian Rappaport and others are very reliable, that has not been confirmed by the Silver and Black. But later on Monday, and this has not been confirmed by the team either, but Tom Pelissero from NFL Network put out a new quarterback in Las Vegas. The Raiders are signing Desmond Ridder off the Cardinals practice squad per sources. O'Connell's headed to IR, and now Ridder, the former Falcons starter, will join Gardner Minshew in the Raiders quarterback room. So there you go. That was the chronological order from Shefty to Rap Sheet to Tom Pelissero about the Raiders and their quarterback situation. From all accounts, it sounds like Aiden O'Connell definitely is going to go to IR. Again, has not been confirmed by the team yet, but we'll just kind of leave it there as it is. And then Desmond Ridder is signed off the practice squad. And, we talked about quarterbacks. Is there a chance that maybe, Tom Telesco goes outside of the organization, brings in another quarterback? I had mentioned Bryce Young. I saw some people mention Hendon Hooker in Detroit. I had some other people hit me up talking about Joe Milton in New England. All those were options, but all those would cost draft capital. So Desmond Ridder doesn't cost any draft capital. There, he's being signed off the practice squad. And all that means is that they have to put him on the active roster. So, I tweeted out, not too sure what this, what he brings to the table, but he is from outside the building. And Tashawn Reed from The Athletic brought up a really good point. He said, hey, he's not as bad as Carter Bradley, who is the practice squad quarterback for the Raiders, an undrafted quarterback. Obviously, that's Gus Bradley's kid. And I know a lot of people, even on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Monday, were calling in saying, hey, let's just see what Carter Bradley has. Let's just see what Carter Bradley has. Carter Bradley's not ready to play either, right? He's not the answer. I don't know if there is an answer. I'm not saying Desmond Ridder is, but, also Tashawn said, well, he's got starter experience. So that's a good point. He started 13 games for the Falcons last year, completed 64.2% of his passes, 2,836 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. So nothing to write home about. There's not a quarterback out there that all of a sudden the Raiders can go make a move for. That was going to be the end-all, be-all. Had a lot of people hit me up talking about Ryan Tannehill. Don't think he's an option either. There's a lot of okay out there. There's a lot of mediocre out there. There's a lot of well, maybe he can do something out of there. There's not any, that's the answer right there to the Raiders' problems. So now you have Gardner Minshew and Desmond Ridder. I'm expecting sometime today you'll actually get an official update from the Raiders on that, where they're confirming these moves. And we reached out to, Raiders PR, and they said that they could not confirm anything on Desmond Ridder at the time. So that's where we stand. And I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that because, again, that notification will come down one way or the other from the Raiders sooner rather than later. So that's what the situation looks like with the quarterback situation. Again, I don't know what Desmond Ridder brings to the table, except for he has a little bit of starting experience. He's young. He's mobile. He was good at Cincinnati. He's got experience with Trey Tucker. So there's that. I mean, I'm sure he's not going to be afraid to throw him the ball. And I do expect that, if in fact this gets confirmed sooner rather than later, he'll probably get into the mix. He probably won't get into the mix this week against the Chiefs. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Probably won't get into the mix against Cincinnati the following week. But then the Raiders have the bye week after that. So I can easily see them trying to prep him up, get him ready, and see what he can do following the bye week. That, to me, makes a lot of sense. It'll give him 3 weeks pretty much of preparation. And then you see where he can go from there. Maybe he'd be ready in time for the Bengals, but I definitely would not throw him out there with the Chiefs, knowing how good the Chiefs defense is. And that's what I was saying about Carter Bradley when people were hitting up the show on Raider Nation Radio 920 about Carter Bradley. I was like, really? Do you really want Carter Bradley, an undrafted free agent, to get his first NFL start against the Kansas City Chiefs and their defense? I don't think that that's a very good idea. So that's all the unconfirmed roster news and updates from the Raiders. This is confirmed. The Raiders signed defensive tackle Zach Carter to the active roster. He was a guy who was on the practice squad. He was originally a third-round pick of the Bengals back in 2022. Played in 37 career games, had 16 starts, 55 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and 2 passes defense. And in a corresponding move, the Raiders waived defensive tackle Nesta Jade Silvera, who they had selected late in the draft in 2023. So there you go. So Nesta Jade Silvera will have to try to clear waivers, and if he does, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up back up on the Raiders practice squad. But they've activated Zach Carter to the 53-man roster. And it's funny, when the Raiders actually signed Zach Carter to the practice squad, a lot of Cincinnati Bengal fans, I don't know if Zach Carter was just like enemy of the state or whatever the case may be. I don't know. But a lot of Bengal fans reached out and were like, oh, what are you going to do with him? And I was like, I have no idea. He's a practice squad guy, right? I mean, he's a depth piece at best. I mean, he's not a guy that I think is going to go in there and solve all the woes that the Raiders defense may potentially be having. But a lot of Bengal fans were just pretty much like, he is not worth the salt. And so doing a little bit more research, when he was at Florida, he actually played the edge rusher position instead of the defensive tackle. And apparently then that's what the Bengals put him in, was the D tackle spot. Or I could have it backwards. I'll just throw that disclaimer out there. It was one of the two. Basically what happened, however he was playing in college, the Bengals played him differently. Either he was inside in college and they played him outside, or he was outside in college and played him inside. So again, obviously the research wasn't fantastic, but I do know that was the situation. He wasn't the position he was playing in college. So maybe, I don't know what Patrick Graham plans. I don't know what Robbie Leonard, the defensive line coach, have plans for him. Again, he's depth at best as far as I'm concerned. But, they're obviously a defense and a defensive line in particular that's been riddled with injuries. So maybe he brings a little juice to the table. Who knows? But he's been added to the active roster. And as I mentioned on Monday's show, there's a lot of evaluation that's going to be going on within the organization when it comes to the silver and black. I did want to get to some sound of Antonio Pierce, what he had to say on Monday real quick as we close out segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. And the first one is about the penalties and turnovers. Again, something I'm very surprised has been hitting the Raiders hard under Antonio Pierce, because that's something that he focused in on. He didn't want penalties, did a really good job as an interim last year, making sure that they eliminated their penalties. And the turnovers was something that he talked about quite a bit in training camp. So I asked him that question about the turnovers and penalties at the press conference on Monday.
Penalties and turnovers is something that has been rinse and repeat the last 3 weeks, but it's been a focus that you wanted to make sure did not happen.
Right.
How surprised are you that on your watch this is happening consistently, I should say?
Yeah, the penalties, especially pre-snap, I always worry about everything that happens before and after the play. In between the play, that's football. You got to work on technique, get better in that sense. The turnovers, that's it's being careful with the football. That's either throwing interceptions. We've had 10 in the last 3 weeks. 7 interceptions and 3 fumbles, right? We talk about ball security. We do them in every drill to start practice. And then obviously at the quarterback play, we got to make the better decisions.
Again, really surprised that that's been happening on his watch, because that was something that he was very adamant about, that cannot happen. And for the last 3 weeks, it has been really bad when it comes to penalties. Even last week when they only had 4 penalties, there were 4 penalties that were really bad ones that hit them at the wrong times, and they just are not good enough to be able to overcome that. They just aren't. That's something that we talked about quite a bit. Also, I asked them on Monday about Gardner Minshew. Again, this was after he said that he didn't know what the status of Aiden O'Connell was. I said, well, if Gardner Minshew is the quarterback moving forward, if you do have to stick with him, how do you keep him out of his own head, right? Not allowing one turnover to turn into multiple turnovers. Here's what Antonio Pierce had to say about that.
If Gardner is the quarterback moving forward based off whatever happens with Aiden, how do you stop him from allowing one turnover to turn into 2, into 4? Like, how does he get out of his own head?
Yeah, I think you said it best, right? He got to get out of his own head. I mean, he's a quarterback. He's been in this league. He understands it. Obviously, we've encouraged him. Very positive on the sideline with everything that was going on yesterday. Our team was like, no blinking. That's all you kept hearing on the sideline. Deal with adversity. I thought our defense did a good job of responding, even though on the sudden change they did score. But throughout the game, we kept fighting. Even at the end of the game, when we had a chance to get another stop, we did give offense the ball again with less than 2 minutes to see if we can go ahead and for the win.
It just looks like Gardner Minshew is thinking. Again, now that we know that Desmond Ridder has been added to the mix, again, they'll get confirmed sooner rather than later. We'll see what happens, how long he's actually out there, how long Aiden O'Connell is going to be out. If he's going to be on IR, he's going to miss at least 4 weeks. But it sounds like 4 to 6 weeks is a real possibility for Minshew and or for Gardner, I should say. That is Gardner. For O'Connell, I should say. And then Gardner Minshew could be the dude unless Desmond Ridder takes his place. And obviously that'll be based off what they see in practice. The final soundbite is really multiple sound bites all in one. It's Antonio Pierce. He was being asked, matter of fact, Hondo Carpenter asked him about, not allowing the team to get comfortable with losing. And then myself and Adam Hill also had a follow-up for him on that as well.
You can't get comfortable with losing. That's first and foremost. And just like these guys are in today, they're out there working out and doing everything they need to do to get themselves ready to play. We got another big game this week. Again, we get paid to play 17 weeks, right? So I don't think we went to the season thinking we were going to win every game. Didn't expect to lose 3, but that's where we're at now. And at the end of the day, all we can do is worry about now the Kansas City Chiefs, who we know very well. They're coming in here. It's a divisional game. And to answer your question directly is you just got to move on. It's the nature of the beast, right? We got to do better. We got to stop beating ourselves with turnovers, with penalties. When opportunities are there, we have to make them. We're not doing that right now as well. And it's nothing that we like. I'm sure Raider Nation doesn't like, and we got to keep getting better and go to work, just like a lot of teams in the National Football League. We got to get better, and we can't use no excuse for injuries or this or that or quarterback. OC, head coach, don't matter. We're all involved in this as an organization, as a staff and players, and we got to stick together. Don't really get into the outside noise and let everybody pick us apart. That's what the whole offseason is about, because I knew at some point we'll get into this dark moment, and it's a dark moment for us right now, and we got to get out.
With that being said, how tough has this been with the expectations you had going into the season and to where it's at right now?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't expect to be 2-5, like to see that flipped. But at the end of the day, you got to live in reality, and that's what we're dealing with. Again, like I said, a lot of the leagues dealing with the same stuff, man. Injuries, turnovers, just being inconsistent. All of us can get better, myself included. And I think as we keep going through this, there's still a lot of football left. The season's not over. We're not tanking. We're not trying to lose games to do anything better for the future. Hell, we're trying to be the best team we can. And right now, we're not a good team.
You said you don't want the team to get comfortable with losing. Did you like their demeanor after the game, on the flight home this morning, everything?
What demeanor? Everybody's pissed off. But I like their demeanor today. We're working. Everybody's in here to work. Nobody's missing work today. So that's really good just to see our guys be consistent and steady. Like I told them, at the end of the day, we all signed up for this game, man. It's tough. It's hard. It's not easy to win the National Football League. It's easy to get poked at like we are now, myself now, when you lose. But we can't worry about that. We can't flinch. We can't blink. We just got to go to work. We got to go to work. That's all I know how to do is work. Get better each and every day and find a way to get better. Right now, we're not a good football team.
That's the last thing you want, is to get comfortable with losing. You just can't, right? And they've got to find a way to keep this team locked in and engaged. Something that I didn't think that it was going to be a question. I still don't think it's a question. I don't think it's a lack of effort when they're out there playing. It's just a lack of execution. The execution is not where it needs to be. So AP is going to be tasked with making sure those guys are all engaged and staying locked in and not getting too down on the results that they've been facing as they're on a current 3-game losing streak. Coming up in segment number 2, you'll get a text from Jason in Colorado. It's a really lengthy text, a really good text, really talking about kind of the state of the team like we talked about on Monday's show. And we'll have a lot of nice little back and forth as far as I'm concerned when it comes to that text. We'll do it coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors, including FanDuel. And I know that 7 weeks are in the books, but it's never too late to jump into America's #1 sportsbook. You can get a hunch in the middle of the game, whatever game it is. Monday Night Football had 2 different games, but it can happen on a Thursday, it can happen on a Sunday, and that's just NFL action. It could be college football action, the World Series that's getting ready to get underway, the NBA, which is back. You can check out all the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. I also want to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn is not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, they might not have the time or the resources to hire. So they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. Even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and even quicker. Right now, post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to give this segment to my guy Jason in Colorado, who's been patiently waiting to get his text on. This text came in late last week. I saw it, I read it, I broke it down, thought, man, it's a really good one. Problem is, I think it came through on Crossover Thursday, so I couldn't get it in then. Friday, I didn't have enough time to get it in. I just wanted to make sure that I gave it its proper due. So let's go ahead and jump into this text from Jason in Colorado from last week, where he said, I just want to text the state of this particular fan concerning the team. This is a quarterback-driven league, period. Getting a quarterback who can carry the team on a regular basis should be priority number 1 above all else. We have all been through 20-plus years of middle to poor play. The one outcome has been that we rarely were in position to draft a good quarterback. This is not to say lose on purpose, but I think we will not do that anyways, and I'm okay with it for a bit. If it is a choice between 1 or 2 seasons of not being competitive at all versus decades of mediocrity, I'll take the former. With that in mind, these are the possible actions. Get some teams answers with the rest of this season. 1, stick with Aiden O'Connell the rest of the year. If he actually improves, that's great. If not, we'll know for sure to go hard after a good quarterback. That's point 1, and that was before the Aiden O'Connell injury on Sunday. And now we know he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, that we're still waiting for the Raiders to confirm that. And I hate that because it does feel like, man, Aiden O'Connell could have just rode this out, and then by the end of the season, or at least close to the end of the season, we would know exactly what he brings to the table. I feel like I have a pretty good idea what Aiden O'Connell brings to the table. I feel like he's a really good backup at this stage of the game, but it kind of stinks that he hasn't had the opportunity this year to prove that he could be the starter and work with a full deck, right? No Devontae. He hasn't had Jacoby Myers the last couple of games, and obviously he left the game on Sunday early, right? I mean, it's in a disarray. The offensive line has been makeshift at best. There's no running game. The offensive coordinator is still trying to figure out where he's best from, the field or the booth, right? There's been so much kind of up and down and just not good, right? No Michael Mayer, obviously. He's got his personal situation that he's going through. So it's like Aiden O'Connell never really got a real shot to show what he can do as the full-time starter. But the good thing is we did get to see him last year. We kind of know what he brings to the table. I saw him in training camp and preseason every single day. And, I mean, him not winning the job out of training camp and out of preseason kind of told you what you need to know. On to point 2 from our guy Jason. Similarly, stick with Luke Getsy as well to see if he improves from the booth. He'll likely be gone at the end of the season. His scripted plays work well, but when it comes to real-time calls and adjustments, he doesn't seem to have it. I agree with that 100%. I have no problem with letting Luke Getsy ride this thing out and see if he gets better, right? I thought that he was better from the booth on Sunday than he's been from the field all season long. That's not saying a whole lot. The bar is not super high, but and there were still missteps as far as some of the play calling, but I thought it was his best game as the offensive coordinator and play caller for the Silver and Black. On to point 3, the defense seems to be injured and tired from being on the field so long, but those are temporary. I don't have many concerns there, other than having successor to Patrick Graham. If he ends up with a head coaching gig, we need to be ready in a way that keeps up continuity. And the only thing I'll say about the defense is the run defense all season long, going back to training camp going back to preseason, hasn't been good. That needs to be improved. It doesn't feel like Patrick Graham is is head coach material right now. Doesn't feel like he's going to get a head coaching job based off what the Raiders have done. If they had been a stellar defense, a lights-out defense like I expected it to be, sure, no doubt about it. I thought that Patrick Graham would be gone, and they'd have to, pick from who they have on the roster and on the staff to be his successor. But right now, it doesn't feel like that's really trending in that direction. Matter of fact, I'd like to see the defense trend up a little bit. But again, if you go back to the beginning of the season, losing Malcolm Kuntz, lost Marcus Epps, right? Tyree was out for a while. Max Crosby missed the game. Like there's Christian Wilkins is obviously out for a while. I mean, there's so many things. It just feels like this team kind of got unraveled before they ever really got started. Again, you can't use injuries as an excuse. Every team is dealing with them, and teams find ways to overcome it and still win games. But it just stinks that all the expectations that I had for this team, and especially like the defense, just hasn't come to fruition for one reason or the other. Point 4, AP is a new coach and isn't losing games while he learns. The one thing I do expect from him now, though, is a motivated team who doesn't quit and plays hard. If this team doesn't quit, give him another season to prove himself. And I'm glad you brought up that point. I brought up the Lions and Dan Campbell last week, how it did not look good when he first took over, only winning 3 games his first season, and then even starting out the second year, pretty poor. And I'm sure that people were calling for his head, like people are calling for Antonio Pierce's head. I'm in no way doing that. A lot of people have called in and laughed and joked and said, this is what you guys get for wanting AP. He told you that he wasn't the right guy for the job. When I know, as I've done this show every single day for I couldn't tell you how many years, 6+, that people were calling for AP. People were calling, just like I was saying, how he was right for the job. It hasn't proven to be correct yet. He's 2-5. That's obviously not where he wants to be. That's not where Raider Nation wants the team to be either. But I am by no means trying to say that he's not the right guy for the job. All I'm saying is that everyone's going to be evaluated at this stage of the game. There's no doubt. And especially now that Tom Brady's a part minority owner, his role has not been defined by anyone. No one's come out and specifically said what he's going to do. A lot of people have said what they expect him to do and what they hear that he's going to do, but I don't know that to be true until it's actually confirmed. If it's ever confirmed, it might be a wait and see type thing. So I know everyone is being evaluated by multiple people, and it's not me who's going to make the decision on if AP's around. It's not you who's going to make the decision. It's the people that matter, right? The ownership, Mark Davis, Tom Brady, the people in the front office, right? Everyone's going to have their own say in what's going on, and it's not us. All we can do is observe, but I do know that it's evaluation season, and everyone, and I mean everyone who suits up for the Raiders and gets a paycheck from the Raiders will be evaluated. On to point 5, he said, aside from the quarterback, the one position I'm focused on is center. Andre James may be okay in stats, but he's constantly pushed backwards, and is a big reason for our quarterbacks can't count on a clean pocket. Our line play has been subpar in general since he became the center. I'd like to see what Parham could do there as soon as he's healthy. I will still watch the games in the family, and I'm excited to be attending our first game at Allegiant for Denver and F1. Keep your heads up, nation. It's a painful season, yes, but it can also help build for the future. That's from Jason in Colorado, and you see why I saved it for one segment, right? Very lengthy. Plus, I knew I had a lot to respond to and talk about on that text as well, and I think that he really helped put it into perspective, from a fan's perspective that's not getting too high or getting too low, but just kind of understands it is what it is at this stage of the game. It stinks to be in that position. I would love to be talking about the Raiders as the first-place team, or challenging with the Chiefs, or this game coming up on Sunday, man, as a first-place team, or first-place game, right? I mean, there's so many different areas that I'd like to be addressing when it comes to this game coming up on Sunday, that's not the conversation, because the Raiders are still trying to figure out who they are. They don't even have their identity as of right now, so they've got to figure that out sooner rather than later. But you bring up a lot of great points. The point about Andre James and the offensive line, that needs to be settled too. The offensive line in general. Is Colton Miller going to end up being the guy? Is he going to have to be replaced at left tackle? Can Jackson Powers-Johnson hold that down at that left guard spot? Is he better at the center position? Dylan Parham's dealing with the Achilles injury. Is he going to come back, maybe slide back to that left guard? Like, there's so many different pieces there. It's a young offensive line. DJ Glaze is a rookie. He's still going to learn, right? There's a lot there, and they've got to just figure that out. Whether they're just going through the rest of the season and they have a few pieces here and pieces there that they're putting in, they're working into the mix, but that does need to be addressed. And really, a lot of us didn't think Andre James was even going to be back this season, but you saw that the money that was being paid in free agency for interior offensive linemen was massive. So the Raiders realized that it was cheaper to bring Andre James back, and we'll see how long that lasts. We'll see if he's the guy moving forward, but there's been a lot of questions about Andre in that center position. But fantastic text, really. Again, Jason, thank you for your patience. I'm sorry it took a few days to get to it, but I thought it was worth it because it was a really lengthy, really good, informative text. So appreciate that as well. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of today's show, which is Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets that you see for your favorite teams play, you can get them even easier. So they filter out all the fluff. It shows you only the incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So if you're planning on coming to Allegiant this weekend for the Chiefs game, then you can go to Game Time and get some really good deals. You can cut out all the fluff and just get right to the point. This is what I want. This is where I want to be seated. This is what I want my seats to look like because, oh, by the way, they have the panoramic seat view. So you can actually see what the view would look like from your seats before you buy the tickets, which I think is a game changer. I think that is something that's not talked about enough. That is actually my favorite feature that Game Time has. Now, it's not just football games. It's not just sporting events. It's anything, right? I mean, it's theater, it's comedy shows, it's concerts, anything that has a ticket, movies, whatever the case may be. Game Time has the hookup for you. And again, all the features that they have apply to everything that you could be looking for. So right now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's going to give you $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a text from Felice. Hey, Q, it's Felice here, first time texting. Unlike most of your callers, I'm a girl. I know Al Davis would admonish Mark for being too close to the players when he was still alive. Do you think that this hinders his ability to make good decisions and also run the team effectively? I read somewhere that he and Devontae were really close. Maybe that's why Devontae waited so long to ask for a trade, resulting in the Raiders getting less for him than they might have earlier in the season. I just wonder if Al was right all along. I also think Mark didn't conduct a proper coaching search this offseason. He was listening to what the players wanted instead of looking at it objectively. I would certainly not expect him to sell the team, but all his decisions have so far only accumulated in poor results. Maybe it's time for him to give control of football operations to someone else, and he could worry about the business side of things later. That's from Felice. Thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. And yeah, there could be some truth to that. Like, I can't confirm Al's and Mark's, relationship and how close Mark is to the players or what Al thought about that. I do know that, Mark has said and obviously embraced the alumni a lot. I do know that him and Mark and Devontae did have a good relationship. I know that Mark and Max Crosby have a really good relationship. Even Josh Jacobs had a really good relationship with MD. But the one thing I do know is that he also allows the football people to make the football decisions. Right. And, maybe the whole, player personnel, president of football operations, that was something that was rumored to be a possibility when they hired AP and ended up hiring Tom Telesco. So maybe, maybe Tom Brady takes that kind of a role. Right. I mean, I know Mark wants to win. All right. I know that he's made a bunch of decisions that haven't worked out. Right. From giving John Gruden the long contract, from some will say letting Rich Bisaccia go. Others will say hiring Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, right? I mean, none of those have resulted in what we want to see, which is winning. So, I mean, maybe, a new voice in Tom Brady can help out. I don't think that he's ever done player evaluations yet. So that's also something to question. What is that going to look like? What is that going to be like? We'll see. When he hired AP, I know that they had a whole, they had a group of folks that were on the panel that were interviewing people and talking to different people, and they ultimately resulted in AP. I just don't think that there was too many other choices. I mean, I know I was 100% sold that Antonio Pierce was the guy, and I still believe he's the guy. He's just got to go out there and prove it. But it was really hard when all the players are saying AP, the fans are screaming AP, the stadium is chanting AP, right? I mean, that all happened. That's not me making stuff up. All that happened. I mean, the stadium, as they closed out the season against the Denver Broncos, everybody in the stadium was chanting AP's name. Everybody nationally that I talked to was like, hey, AP's the guy. Perfect. I mean, like, that's what it was. So it was really a tough position because I know a lot of folks said, well, Jim Harbaugh could have been the guy. He was available. He's a proven winner. But I just think that it was such a tough position, And sometimes you got to make those tough decisions. I'm glad I wasn't in those meetings and had to be part of that, because that's a tough call. It's just everyone's rooting for AP. Everyone's saying that he's the right guy for the job. He brought the Raider way back. He grew up a Raider fan, Compton, California. I mean, the storylines. Again, I'm not making any of this stuff up. It's all there. So it was really a tough position for him to be in, and that's why maybe a guy like Tom Brady can come in if in fact that's what he's going to do, and help make some of these decisions where he doesn't have any ties. And a lot of times that's the best thing, is not to have ties to something. And it's easier to make decisions like that because you know that it's not going to hurt your feelings, right? Once you get personally involved, a lot of times it's a lot harder. So you could be onto something, right? I guess we'll have to wait and see how everything plays out. But thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from T. Dougie in Cali. He's calling to ask a few questions about Antonio Pierce, the head coach, and has a few statements about him. Here he is, T. Dougie in Cali.
Q, this is T. Dougie in California. It's time to start talking about Antonio Pierce, the head coach. There's injuries everywhere. We get it. But this team is just not getting better in any aspect of the game. And let's just say what it is. What Antonio Pierce brought to this team last year is nowhere to be found this year. And I think, there's something to be said about a motivational coach. It definitely runs out. That magic runs out. And the reason we all bought into it, because 9 weeks is a long time. He did it for 9 weeks. It wasn't like 3 or 4 weeks. I would say every game last year, this team gave it their all. Even the offense didn't look good all the time. You saw the effort. It's just the offense wasn't creative, and it didn't have the quarterback. This year, I can't tell you one thing that Antonio Pierce brings to this team. And if you really think about it, the defense is only playing as good as because they have a system they've been together for 3 years. Could you imagine if Antonio Pierce brought in his own defensive coordinator, what this team would really look like? I mean, we should be a team that shouldn't win any games at this point. That's how bad they look. They shouldn't win any more games. And, you got to start thinking about the future. And he's just not the guy. I was an AP fan. It's not something you could just click and turn on, because it's just going to get worse at this point, because guys are going to stop buying in. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. I'm not sure. But I say get Ben Johnson from the Lions next year, and get a quarterback, and get T. Higgins in here. There's a path to a better team. Thanks, you.
T. Doug, thanks so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And I do want to reiterate what I said on Monday's show that was apparently misunderstood, not necessarily by you, but by others. I like AP as a head coach. I pounded the table 3 weeks into him being the interim that he would get the job, right? I never do that. My number one policy is if he's the interim, keep him the interim. Don't hire the interim. But I was 100% sold on Antonio Pierce. And unlike others, I'm not going to turn around and say, oh, well, you know what? That was a bad call. No, Antonio Pierce is not right for that. I'm not going to do that. Even though I know some people hear me say that, they don't really hear me say they hear what they want to hear. I am not saying that at all. I try to reiterate that and say it as slow as possible so no one can make that mistake. But even on Monday, I had multiple people telling me, how can you question AP now? You didn't question Josh McDaniels. One, I don't know how Josh McDaniels got into the conversation. Two, not questioning Antonio Pierce. All I'm saying is he's got to prove himself just like everybody else. So that's just kind of what it is. Everyone in the Raiders organization right now is being evaluated by somebody. Everyone's got a boss outside of ownership, right? So that's just kind of what it is, right? And so he said it before too. Like, it's a production-based business, and if you don't produce, you won't be in business. I know that line because I really like that line, right? That goes with that can apply to a lot of things in life. So I'm going to use that as much as possible. So I mean, when he said that, I thought it's a good one. It really is. So I'm not dumping on AP at all. I know he's not happy with 2-5, right? Just like he told me on Monday when I asked him about expectations. He said, well, I didn't really have any. I didn't think we were going to be 2-5. I'd like to be 5-2, but I didn't really have too many expectations. So there's that, right? And he's just working to try to grow and get better as a head coach. And there's going to be growing pains, just like there was growing pains with Dan Campbell when he was in Detroit the first year. Does that mean that AP is going to turn into Dan Campbell? No. Does that mean that he's not? No, right? We don't know until we see it. And the only thing that's going to do is take patience. The question is he going to be allowed to have, are they going to have patience with him? I don't know. I can't make that call. I know that there's an owner who wants to win. There's a guy who's in the building now. It's a part owner that is a glorified winner, right? He's certified, glorified. He is a winner. So there's that. I mean, there's so much to it. But yeah, I am not at all turning my back and saying that Antonio Pierce is not the guy. I still believe in him, and I will believe in him till he's not the guy anymore. It's just that simple. Again, I'm not going to change my opinion on who who I thought was the right guy for the job from the beginning. So thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from 360 Raiders. Says, hey, Q, 360 Raider here. Going to make this short and sweet. The offense is terrible. Minshew or Connell, it doesn't matter. All the signs were there in training camp. Luke Getsy must go. That's from 360 Raider. And right, Minshew has turned the ball over a ton. Obviously way more than O'Connell, but he's had a lot more action than O'Connell. Now O'Connell looks like he's going to miss some time. Desmond Ritter's now into the mix as well. Who knows if he's going to see the grass or when he's going to see the grass, but they added him to the 53-man roster, not officially, but as it stands right now, he's been added to the 53-man roster, so we'll see what happens. And Luke Getsy probably will go at the end of the season, and unless it gets really, really bad, I don't expect him to go anytime before that. You could always look at the bye week. Those are always the weeks when things happen. So if there was going to be a move made in season, it'll probably be right around then. They got the Chiefs this week, then Cincinnati next week, then they got the bye. So I could see something happening then. But again, that's just kind of remain to be seen. I have no problem with Luke Getsy riding it out the rest of the year and seeing if he improves from the booth. Right? I thought when Patrick Graham moved to the booth, that was a death nail to him, and he actually got better. So there's that. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a call from Jordan in Oregon. He's calling disappointed about the loss on Sunday, but also has a few points outside of the game, including Brock Bowers in the quarterback position and more. Here he is, Jordan in Oregon.
Hey, what's going on, Q? Jordan in Oregon. Just wanted to call in. Pretty bummed out about the loss this Sunday, but definitely not bummed out how I used to be, man. Just thinking back to a few years ago, the hope that I had for this team was a whole different level, but we don't even got to go there. But anyway, I just wanted to call in and point out something super obvious, but Brock Bowers and just the emergence and what he's, it's just kind of the beginning of his career, but what he's looking like is something that is, unbelievable. And I just want to bring up, great hit. I know he fell into our lap, but just a great pick. And it's been a long time since we could say that about a first-round pick for the Raiders. So I think if you look at how a lot of these Super Bowl teams are built, you have to hit with those first-round picks. And so super excited about that. Second thing I wanted to bring up is the quarterback situation. Obviously, we are, the epitome of a team that needs a quarterback. This is usually what happens before you go into a draft picking high is you'll have musical chairs at quarterback. I think a lot of about the Texans, even when they had Mills and, a lot like a O'Connell sort of season where you're just putting up some decent numbers sometimes, but you just know he's never going to get you over the hump. And so, I'm excited about the first round way that it turned out this year, and it gives you hope for next year. And that's the point I want to bring is, obviously it's Q, you've stated so many times is that there wasn't a problem moving on from Carr. It's just they had to have the plan, not a plan. And I've always thought that's well put, and I just think that's where this front office has to be headed right now is that straight up is it can't just be a plan. It's got to be the plan with quarterback situation. And early on in the summertime, I saw a lot of people writing about like this is going to shake out to be kind of a sketchy quarterback draft coming up. But so far what I've seen, there's a couple guys that look like they have the ability to create with their legs as well as have some good arm talent, and with Sanders and a few others. I know people aren't huge on Shedeur Sanders, but between him and Ward, those are a couple guys I'm keeping an eye on throughout the last couple months of college football. But anyway, man, appreciate all you do. Peace out.
Jordan, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, Bowers is fantastic as advertised. Great first round pick. Very excited to see him continue to grow. He's been everything that he needs to be and then some. Does he have a few mistakes he makes here and there? Sure. Right. Blocking is not his number one forte. Right. Trey Tucker gets into the end zone if he blocks the right guy on that end around on Sunday. But I think we can live with a couple mistakes here and there from the rookie when he's doing everything that he's doing. As far as the quarterback goes, no matter what the Raiders do this season, right, regardless of what their record ends up, if they go 2-15 or they go 12-5, if they go 12-5, they must address the quarterback in the offseason. That's got to be priority 1, 2, and 3 for Tom Telesco, right? The Raiders have quarterbacks that can get it done. They could win games, but they're not that franchise guy, in my opinion. And unfortunately for Aiden O'Connell, we're not really going to get a healthy dose of him because he's going to miss some time. But I do believe that that's got to be the number one priority to make sure they go and get their quarterback. A lot of teams got quarterbacks last year in the draft that needed quarterbacks. So there's going to be a really good chance for the Raiders, again, regardless what their record ends up being, to go and get their quarterback of the future, whether that's Shador, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, right? I mean, there's plenty of quarterbacks out there, and I just shot some names out there. There's no particular order. It's not my call. We'll get into what quarterback I think fits best and who I'd like to see there. We'll do that much later on. It's only October. I'm not working on that just yet, but I am watching college football like a hawk and trying to observe as many quarterbacks as possible to see who I think would fit best with the silver and black. But again, those are conversations for another day. But Jordan, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. A text from AJ from AZ, which is Arizona. Big E in the 209 hit us with a call. Sub-Zero Raider hit us with a pretty lengthy text. We'll get all that coming up tomorrow. We'll get more news and notes. Maybe we'll get some confirmation on some of the moves with Aiden O'Connell and Desmond Ridder as well. If we do, of course, we'll bring that to the table as well. We'll have plenty of conversation. Keep this party rolling, as the Raiders prepare Week 8 action, I should say, the Kansas City Chiefs at Allegiant Stadium. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.